Hello and welcome to today's content, which will be talking about Gargas because his win selection quest has been released, and yeah, I've been a little bit busy, so I didn't get this out like as fast as I could or should. But yeah, without further ado, let's begin. For Gargas' main job, he is the Black Mage, so he's going to have Aerial, Bio, Eroga, Toad, and Flare. For his EX upgrades, Eroga turns into Eroga Disperser, and as you can see, the AoE grows slightly larger, but there's not too much change outside of that. But this is very nice in terms of just hitting more units in general. From here, his EX ability he gains is going to be Wind Lash, which is going to be a decrease of AoE resistance by 30%. Unfortunately, it's only going to be 105% damage, but hey, at least it's not too bad of a benefit. And as you can see here, it is not only 5 tiles range out, it is also a very large AoE, so that's very nice to have. For our sub job for Black Mage, we're just gonna have the standard stuff. For Black Mage, which is Eroa, if I'm even saying that correctly, for like damage, we have Drain and Osmos and Sleep. For the Kododama sub job, we're gonna have, most importantly, in my opinion, Nimble Movement, and then Unavailable Pain, and possibly Bursting Light. Unfortunately, as you can see here, he does not have the anti-magic wall ability. And we also are going to have the Green Mage sub-job, which is not really going to be used too much in my opinion. But as you can see here from his abilities in general, that he's actually pretty good for PvE stuff, like specifically I would say Tower. But just in terms of overall like abilities, it's kind of so-so. I also have to say before we move to the next slide, he does have casting time on everything. I did not post it here specifically, but picture-wise, but he does not have a limit break as well, and he has cast time on everything. For resistances and passives, here as you can see for his damage types, 0% to slash, -5% to pierce, -5% to strike, 5% to missile, and 15% to magic. Overall, that's it's a little weak on the physical side, but at least he has a little bit in magic. Here he also does have though 5% AoE resistance, which is better than nothing, 0% to single target, and he does have a base of 0 defense and 0 spirit with his master ability included at level 120. For his resistances to statuses, 50% to confusion, 50% to poison, 10% to berserk. As you can see here, obviously that you'll immediately expect on my ratings page that he does not have resistances to disable, stop, silence. Yeah, it's unfortunately for his statuses for resistances are kind of lackluster. From here though, his master ability is going to be the mono wind, that as we know, and then the decrease of cast time at least by 200, which is it's like arbitrary numbers, but yeah, 200, so it's not bad. That's almost the same amount as Helena, if not the same amount, so that's better than nothing. And then he has the AoE resistance, as we said earlier, so that's why he has 5% in general. He is a 3 move, 1 jump unit with 80 cost. He does have access to Nimble Movement, however, if you use the Kododama sub-job. For his passives, and what I would recommend, is going to be the Magic Up, which turns with his EX ability into Black Magic Secret Arts, which is going to be his Spirit Penetration. This is very important, you should almost always have it on. From here, you can either use Earth Spirit's Blessing for the Spirit Up or Magic Up level 1. In my opinion, because, I mean, I didn't say it yet, but he is pretty squishy, I would highly recommend just stacking up on his magic and hoping that he just does damage before he dies. That's what I see it as. However, because he does have access to robes, the Earth Spirit's Blessing does enable him to get a decent amount of spirit if you do go that passive. For niche and flex, Emerald Echo is going to be kind of niche depending, like if you're literally using him only for like his debuffs or buffs, he's not going to be doing his role very well, especially compared to other people who can do it much more significantly in terms of utility help, such as like Lemure, who can like deal damage, also has haste and quicken, and haste like yeah, it's just, this is why it's niche and flex, specifically for Gargas. Savior's Protection, I'm not even going to talk about the debuff. Resistance 12 is just not high enough. The magic resistance is not too bad, however, because of his base spirit already, if you're going to be using Savior's Protection without Earth Spirit, that means even if you have a lot of magic resistance, because of how volatile such as like Helena can be in terms of like penetration on magic attack, it's not going to really matter against her specifically, so it's not going to save him from surviving because of how squishy he is. In terms of reaction abilities, he does have Magic Counter, he has Steeled Ephemeral Form, and then Dispel Counter. If anything, I would either use Magic Counter or Steeled Ephemeral Form, probably the Steeled Form, mostly because you just want to reduce damage if you can, and maybe survive. He's so squishy that even with it proccing, it's possible for him to still die. Now here we are at Gargas' rating out of 5, and yes, I did give him a 2.5 out of 5, and I will explain. As in general, because he is a DPS, I will say later like why. I rate DPS as pretty hard because it depends on what they can provide and or do for their team. And he is a 2.5 out of 5, meaning he's not worth really looking at, but he's more better for quote-unquote collection and or tower and or PvE. Anything in terms of PvP and or like used in general, he is easily outclassed by some other units and or in the future. So like that's why I would put him at a 2.5 out of 5. It might be a harsh rating, but I do believe it. So regardless, let's talk about his pros. He does have AoE resistance, even at 5%. It's still usable if you have like a tank on the team. I will say even though he has 5%, it's not a lot, but it's better than nothing, which is why it is recommended in the pros. He does have low HP, unfortunately. He has good magic, low agility, and can reach a very high magic stat for DPS. He can actually reach a very, very high magic stat. He still, unfortunately, cannot beat Helena, but he can still reach a high magic stat if you have the right setup. He also has 40% spirit penetration on a passive, which you can argue is quote-unquote better than Helena in certain circumstances, unless Helena uses the spectacles. But yeah, he also has access to the AoE res and peril by 30%, and he's able to use nimble movement on a sub job. The AoE res and peril 30% is actually very nice. However, keep in mind, first off, it still has cast time. 2, the move itself will not hit very hard. As you saw before, it was literally almost like a 101% only modifier, which is very, very weak. So you're literally banking on the AoE res to work properly. Additionally, because of how AI can react to like those circumstances, it's possible he'll just run up and use flare instead of the AoE res and peril. So yeah, it's not as reliable compared to other things that could be. He can use rods and staffs. That means he can use the cypress pile for magic attack penetration, which is very nice. He's also, I don't know why I skipped it, but he's also able to gain the 12th spirit with the passive, as I said earlier. I mean, it can stack with other like spirit items, equipment, so this is going to be very nice if you want to stack up spirit in particular. Also, as I said earlier, he's also able to cast flare on his main job for possible high single target damage. Keep in mind, flare is actually like, if I recall correctly, like 322% damage, which is very high. It does not have an elemental typing attached to it, so he only gains that from like other modifiers outside of elemental modifiers. He does have a cast time reduction on his master ability, which is very nice. It is not going to be insta-cast for anything, and he has a hard time raising it outside of like his own personal vision card, but he does have a little bit of reduction, so it does help in the end. Now let's talk about his negatives, which is kind of like overwhelming, but yeah. First off, he has no base spirit and defense, and he has to make use of his AoE resistances due to his mediocre resistances overall. He is not like Cloud, where Cloud actually has options for high HP amounts and like flexibility because he has the armor typing, which can easily flex 20 defense or 20 spirit, and then he can also increase his own AoE resistance. That's for armor. Gargas does not have it. He is locked to robes, which is mostly going to be either spirit or a little bit of defense, or just giving himself more magic stat from the Galmia coat. So yeah, he's gonna be squishy no matter what you try to do. Also, he has low HP and he has a low base agility. I believe it was like 58 if I recall correctly at level 120, which is significantly lower compared to most other units, especially meta units that are gonna be much faster than that in comparison. So that is something to think about. He is going to be slower and going to have much less survivability. I believe he has close to like 600, 700, close to maybe 800 less HP than Helena. And that's not even counting if Helena has the Omega Vision card in her party. So yeah, that's significantly shows you how much weaker he is in comparison to Helena in terms of survivability. Now, he has no innate magic attack penetration, means he has to have Garvel's TMR or Cypress Pile if like really needed. You really need to use these if you're going to have him as a DPS, especially if you're going to hit any team that is going to be competent and or has a magic tank. Because he does have the spirit penetration, which is very nice, he does not have any for the magic attack side, and it is hard for him to increase his own damage outside of kind of just spamming flare and the AoE resistance down. He doesn't have much more outside of that. All his abilities have cast time, and he has no limit break available to him. This means he is still able to be cancelled, like Jammer Thrust or like Cyclonic I forgot 9S's ability, but it can also cancel it. But yeah, it can be canceled. As I said in the other slide, he is vulnerable to disable, stop, silence, and other like status elements that you could be hit by. I mean, a lot of units are, but most importantly, you want one of either disable or stop, and if you're a mage, you want silence if possible. One of these is almost always important / relevant because of just how prevalent and how like abused it can be depending on units like in the matchups. Outside of that, he has no 100% hit abilities outside of his sub-job for mediocre damage, which is unavailable pain on the Kodama sub-job. I'll say this right now, any competent unit will not be anywhere close to one shot from that damage. Like, it's just so little damage compared to like Holy or like Black Rose Judgment. Like, it's significantly weaker. But it is 100% hit ability, but it has to be on a sub-job, so you have to use that specific sub-job. Also, as I said earlier, for the magic attack penetration portion, he is limited to only one attack type with little to no flexibility. He literally can only use magic attack types. Like, he does not have any other options. He can, however, either use elementalist or wind. So it might help if you're hitting an ice unit. He'll probably favor flare in almost all circumstances. Now, he has no barrier breaks. He also has no self-barrier and or mitigation for himself outside of his AoE resistance. And he has no buffs on his main job either. You literally have to have buffs on either TMR or his sub job. He has it not on his main job. He can, however, use Black Robed Helena's TMR, which is very nice. You should definitely use it on him if you're going to be using him, unless you're also using her in that situation. As I said earlier, he does have conditional use of AoE reduction ability due to AI / map / setup / map layout. It is not reliable, and what I mean by that is that if a single King Mont is moving up and none of his other teammates are in range, there is a 0% chance that Gargas is going to be using his AoE res in peril because it hits way too low. If anything, he'll be running up to use flare, if anything. It is possible for him to still use it on King Mont depending on map layout, but yeah, that's why we're already playing with like ifs and ands. It's not really worth the consistency. His personal vision card, Memories of Apples, significantly helps his stats, even reduces his cast time by a bit, and gives him even more spirit penetration. However, it is extremely bad for his team setup because it does not really give them anything but like, what, 30% like acquired AP and like some I think it's like a mono earth element like setup that doesn't really even help much. So yeah, it's very, very poor to like help his teammates. And if he's not hyper carrying, and I will say right now, for him to hyper carry is gonna be pretty hard compared to other units. I mean, he can, like I said earlier, he can get a very high magic stat, but there are much other units that can do his job much easier with less investment and better team synergy. This is why he also has like a lower rating. Like, it just has to be that way. His hardest hitting ability does not scale off elemental modifiers. Flare does not scale off elemental modifiers. His master ability for wind attack does not even help him do like class flare. He has to be using other modifiers for increasing that damage. And lastly, why I rated him a 2.5 out of 5 unit. He's just not able, because he's not able to flex out of the DPS role, and he doesn't do it better than most other units in similar DPS, like Black Robed Helena, Summer El Sorel, even like Sweetheart Salir, etc. His rating dives significantly because he's only able to DPS. If he had other options in his sub-jobs, it's potential he could be a 3 out of 5, 3.5 out of 5, maybe even a 4 out of 5 depending on what he has. But because he's only DPS and he's locked to all these cast times, he's locked to like really like only one attack type, and he doesn't have penetration for it innately, his rating just goes significantly down because it's more harder to get him to be useful compared to other units that he can just slot in and do his job even better, which is why overall he is a 2.5 out of 5. Now his TMR chase rating, unfortunately I only gave it a 2 out of 5. His arcane respirator is just so-so. The demonic roar active, which can give magic attack up for allies for 3 turns. There are better TMRs that can do basically the same thing and or more benefits. I will say it is an accessory, so it's not too bad, but there's no like, it's not like a large amount of HP. It's not like a barrier or anything. It's not giving him more agility because he really needs it, and or like to the user in general. it is very niche, and like it's not gonna be really used compared to the like plethora and like way better like setup of other TMRs we have. So that's why his TMR rating is really not it's not really that useful. That's why overall I do believe he's like a 2.5 out of 5 unit. I do believe he can hit hard, but because of meta situations and his like own setup for his own teammates that are not going to be like too strong, he just can't be as effective compared to what we already have out there. So it's just not worth investing too much in him unless you really just want to use him kind of like for fun. So here's my example setup for Gargas. First things first, Halloween Leela. If Halloween Leela gets her EX, I will say the Typhoon Vision card on her is going to be extremely strong. I just have to say that. Outside of that, however, we do have Dario as well, who's going to be holding the Downtime Vision card, mostly to give more HP and slash resistance to his team and ice resistance. Why? Gargas has 0% slash resistance. Having 20 added on top of that before he has like Esper or setups and stuff like that, it's going to be very nice for him just in general, because he's very weak on the physical damage, tanking like, or just even like taking any of the damage in general outside of like arguably magic. So that's why he needs that survivability, and the HP increase will help him a little bit. For his own setup, Cypress Pile is going to be used for the magic attack penetration, the Galmio coat to get his magic attack stat even higher, and Black Robe Helena's TMR because he needs a barrier to survive. Literally, if any chip damage hits him from a capable unit like Cloud, Black Robe Helena, or something like that, he will die, probably in one hit. He is so squishy. From here, we have the Esper Bahamut, mostly because it increases the magic attack element, the magic attack type damage modifiers, as well as like Human Killer for another modifier. And as we said before, Flare is his hardest hitting ability. He cannot use Typhoon as well as Bahamut in terms of damage. So that's why we have that here. He's also using the Ramu Vision card, because not only does it help boost up Halloween Leela, who's arguably going to do way more damage, especially with her EX once it's out, in my opinion. Once her EX is out, I would say Helena is miles far better than Gargas. But anyways, before that, this helps Gargas get his magic attack stat close to like 1000, almost 500, just from this alone. So he's going to be very strong in that department. He can't reach above Helena's max, but he can match her with this setup in terms of just stat alone. And some future stuff to consider. Garvel's TMR, always, especially if you want him for damage and the magic attack penetration. This is very nice for him for do like a big burst, if you can get it off. You want to be careful of ice elements in general, obviously, because he's ice, and magic resistance will be very effective against him. So Fryavia, who has a base of 49% magic attack resistance if you just set her up with her 2 passives outside of any vision card, Esper, or items, you can imagine that Gargas is literally going to be hitting a wall that he can literally do almost nothing against, or very, very little. It is not funny how one-sided that matchup is. And usually, like, you're thinking, oh, like, yeah, because she's ice, but because she's also a magic tank that doesn't have spirit and she just works off her insane amount of magic attack resistance, Gargas is going to have a hard time. And I say this because, like, a lot of people are like, oh, like King Mont is going to die instantly to like El Sorel, like, you know, all them. But if like King Mont has others like tools so that he doesn't die in one shot from them, and I can even attest to that. I've used him in arena against like the water comps. He does not die in 2 or like 3 hits because I have a tank build for him that can survive water, because that's just how it's set up. Fryavia, without any tank setup or anything and just using her 2 passives, can easily tank Gargas, is the example I'm making, because she has those tools of high magic attack resistance. Just for that example. I will also put Summer Kilfe here, mostly because not only does she has a barrier break, she has a good amount of spirit, and she has a decent amount of magic attack resistance. She can potentially, high chance of it happening, one-shot Gargas. So yeah, it's just there. If he doesn't have the barrier, she can kill him even faster. If he does have the barrier, then she would probably need to at least break the barrier to kill him, and or even just use her limit break for a lot of damage to him in that like regard, because she is more tanky against magic. And yeah, that is basically going to be my review of Gargas. I hope you liked it, and please leave a like and or comment. In the end, I still believe he's a 2.5 out of 5 unit. I'm not saying he's useless. I'm not saying he's really bad. I'll just say that he is more challenging to use compared to other units that can do his job, if not better. Especially more so in the future, like if Halloween Leela got like spirit penetration. Hands down, she's like gonna be insanely better compared to Gargas in so many situations. But yeah, outside of that, yeah, until next video, peace out.